Changing minds. How to admit when you're wrong. Let's give an even bigger round of applause to our moderator, who we're welcoming back on stage. I hope she's back there. The lovely and eloquent Lauren Chen. And also returning to the stage is an equally amazing yet unrelated Chen. Let's give it up for Melissa. Next up, we have quite possibly the hardest working person in the room. Founding member of Vice News, director of innovation at Fusion, co-founder of Subverse. The real question is, does Tim Pool ever sleep? And is he a human being? Since gaining prominence with his Occupy Wall Street reporting, he has built a massive independent media YouTube following, reaching over 1 million subscribers. Hold your applause for the man and give it up for the beanie as you welcome Tim Pool. And finally, let's bring out an incredibly popular, or so I'm told, independent vlogger who has over 900,000 vocal followers. Carl Sargon of Akkad Benjamin rose to prominence in the heydays of Gamergate. His story... Not yet. His story arc goes from being a random gamer to YouTube celebrity to aspiring politician. Surely a biopic is in the works. While being a skeptic of theological and political ideologies, he has simultaneously managed to popularize the term classical liberal and made milkshakes great again. Welcome, Carl Benjamin.
So this panel obviously is about changing minds and how to admit when we're wrong, which isn't always easy. So I feel like the logical place to start is, would you guys each, taking turns, want to describe one area, one time that you were wrong and realized it, and how you came to terms with that?
Well, I'm never wrong, so I don't know what I'm doing up here. Actually, no. We were actually talking, I guess backstage you'd call it, and I said there was a story I covered, and I had this like left-wing critic who messaged me and said, "You were wrong," and I said, "Actually, that's an interpretation, but I will accept your interpretation and add an update to the video because I have absolutely no problem being wrong. If I'm wrong, then I'll issue an update and I'll say, hey, wow, I was wrong. In fact, most of the time I'll say something like, I could be wrong about this, so fact check me, but this is what I think. Like, I just don't think I'm smart. I don't think I'm right all the time."
So for me, one of the things that jumps to mind was the time I sort of participated in outreach tweet culture. It was an article in the New York Post that I shared. It basically said the new iPhone had just come out, and it basically said that the people say that the latest iPhone is sexist because they enlarged the iPhone XS or something, like it was just a bigger phone. And it didn't fit into women's hands anymore, and so like these feminists were angry that it was just marginalizing women by not considering the fact that women had small hands and couldn't hold the iPhone. So it's an outrage article. I retweeted it as just another example of look how crazy this culture got. But then I read the article, and several people had pointed at me, did you realize that this entire article was based on like 2 tweets from people who were like Twitter eggs? And I realized, like, oh my God, I just amplified something, I shouldn't have, because it's not people said. It was like literally just 2 Twitter eggs said it, and it's not representative of the culture. So I apologize. I retracted a tweet, but that's just what you have to do if you want to remain credible, and also genuinely not wanting to participate in the culture that I am continuously criticizing.
There's nothing wrong with being wrong. The problem comes when you don't correct yourself. And I know who doesn't watch my channel. When they yell at me, you never admit you're wrong. I'm sure that the people who follow my channel here are aware that I've got at least about half a dozen videos where I'm posting an update or a correction to myself. I mean, in 2014, I featured myself in an episode of This Week in Stupid because I'd made a mistake. I've never been afraid to admit when I'm wrong. I post, like, even when it's the most bad faith actors, like H-Bomber guy, I'd been lazy in a video many years ago, and he called me out. He was like, no, this is, you've been lazy here, you've missed this, and so I just put, you could put a screen over the video. And I just put a link in the description saying, no, this guy's got me, go watch his video to see how I fucked this up. And I'm gonna leave it up, because I'm not ashamed of my mistakes. I'd be ashamed if I didn't correct them.
As much as I probably don't trust Jim Jeffries, there's this really amazing interview he did with Jordan Peterson, which apparently was mishmashed. But he's talking to Peterson about the bakery and whether or not a baker should have to bake a cake for a gay couple. Jordan Peterson criticizes the notion. He then asks him, what about civil rights when they force, businesses to serve the black community? And Jordan goes, maybe I was wrong about that. So I don't know what the real interview was like, but the fact that, Jordan Peterson is the kind of person who would just think about it and go, maybe I was wrong. That's one of the most important aspects of whatever it is this conversation is about, is having someone present a point and you not being hostile to it. You simply saying, oh, I didn't consider that. Wow, that changes my view. I should do some research. It's that simple.
But you'll notice that that's eminently more respectable than any other response he could have given in that regard. Because I watched that too, and Jim Jeffries had him in a logical track. It was like, you either agree with this logic or you are a hypocrite and you're going to start getting angry and aggressive. And Jordan did the respectable thing. He just did the right thing. And I saw left-wing activists who hate Jordan Peterson all over Twitter on viral tweets going, oh, he got him. And it's like, no, he didn't. Jordan Peterson admitted his mistake. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
But think about the activist mentality of, if you admit your mistake, that's a bad thing, don't do it.
But also the press, so I didn't watch this video, and this is the first time I'm hearing about it. But, okay, if you consume a lot of YouTube videos, you would probably have seen this. But every time you see a major profile of Jordan Peterson in any mainstream press, this is not mentioned. They don't paint him as somebody that has epistemic humility. They paint him as some sort of, misogynistic, patriarchal professor. And I think that's really problematic.
And it's such a huge problem right now that any apology is an admission of guilt. No matter what you do, it's like they're just waiting for you to say, what is it? There was like a meme that apologizing in Canada isn't an admission of guilt because they apologize so much. Yeah, if I do something wrong, if I do something that offends you, I might apologize even if I don't think I did anything wrong. I'm trying to better our circumstances and kind of bring us together. But now that's weaponized against you.
Well, the next question I want to ask you all is kind of especially relevant since you guys all have huge platforms and you have followings. I'm sure that at some point or another, each of you has probably been accused of being a no-good, dirty grifter. So in the era of political commentary, where everything you say is public, people can pull it up at any time, how do you, especially when you're maybe looking at other people's profiles or even your own, tread the line between the idea and the reality that people do change over time and the possibility that someone might just be grifting, saying something because it's convenient at the time? And as a culture, is there any way that we should be able to discern it? Should we be skeptical when people profess to change their beliefs at seemingly convenient times, or should we just be open to the idea that, yeah, minds change?
So this happened in 2014. Are we okay? Sounded like some sort of police radio. So the phenomenon that was Gamergate was essentially the same that we've seen in almost every other walk of life, including up to Trump. They are not wrong to say that Trump is a continuation of Gamergate. It's what it is a continuation of the resistance to the sort of moral browbeating from the left and the freedom to just be left alone and tell jokes, frankly. But Gamergate was an early response to this. And the radical left activists who were calling everyone who objected to their censorship and oppressive nature they were really, really aggressive and really, really kind of cultish. And one guy called Ian Miles Chung said, you know what, I actually really think I'm with the wrong crowd here. The guys opposing us actually seem much more accepting and nice than our side. Our side are cruel and vindictive to the people that are in their own crowd. And so he apologized. He said, you know what, I think I'm wrong here, and I'm really sorry. And as soon as I saw it, I made a video just saying, Ian, I accept your apology unconditionally, and I'm never going to bring this up again. And I think that's the way you've got to do it. You've got to show that you are forgiving, because if you're not, you don't accept the apology, and then there's no way of ever actually having any kind of redemption for how you've done something wrong.
Grifters definitely exist. And there are a few people that I would absolutely love to just stand up and start screeching about how they're just doing this for the money. But then I realized people think the exact same thing about me. And so while there are people that I absolutely believe are playing a game politically because it's a lucrative business, I will never play the game of trying to accuse somebody because we're all in the weeds. You know, it's like, I think about the content I do across various channels, and people say things like, hey Tim, you're very critical of Antifa and things like this. And one of the common things that comes up, which I find hilarious, is that people say, like former Occupy activists, for instance, will be like, Tim, what happened to you? You've changed. And then I pull up this interview from the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, where I said basically the exact same thing. And I think a lot of people move, like everyone kind of moves around, their opinions change, and then they assume if we're not on the same side anymore, it's because only you changed. So there are certainly some progressives I know where I've been like, shifty-eyed, like, what are they doing? And then I stop and I think, you know what, man, nah. You should definitely watch their channels too and just try and decide for yourself. Ultimately, it's about trust. And I think it's silly to assume people aren't really true believers in what they're saying. Like, everything's not a business, man. The biggest point I can make about this is people claim, like, I'm trying to pander to an audience to make money. And I'm like, I have no idea who, what the audience will be. I make a video where I talk about what I think, and then people come around to hear me. It's an inversion of what's actually happening. They claim I lie to make money, when in reality, I just say what I think. And then it turns out people who have shared that opinion and that mindset will come and gather around. They see it in a twisted light,
I think the charge of grifting is something that you sort of levy at somebody that you're trying to say, this person doesn't sincerely hold these set of beliefs. And it's always used to attack people's personalities. Like, this person's just a hypocrite, he's not sincere. I've seen several friends who have been accused of this, most notably Andy No, and also someone like Dave Rubin, who's been accused heavily of being a grifter because, he called himself the last liberal, and now he's, gone full right, and a lot of people have accused him of that. But at the end of the day, it's kind of impossible. It's the most uncharitable way to paint somebody's intentions, character assassination. And what it also does is it allows you not to engage with that person's arguments. So it's really toxic. And you, at the end of the day, will never know. Unless you can get behind, somebody's heads. You'll never know whether that person's really grifting. And it's a bad faith argument.
And this may be surprising to many people. I actually know Dave Rubin, and he is absolutely, I would say this, he's absolutely not a grifter. I would say, if anything, he tries very much to be restrained in being too aggressive. And it may be surprising because you've seen a lot of videos where he absolutely rags on, the regressive left, and there's memes about it. But, like, going to his show and talking to him, I think he tries really hard to be kind of, maybe stoic isn't the right word because a lot of people are going to criticize that, but there's a criticism of him that he doesn't know what he's talking about, and in reality, I think he's trying to restrain himself. I think I've talked to him in private, and I think he's a smart guy who knows what he believes what he believes. And just to throw it back to what you said, the easiest way to discredit someone's argument is to not argue and just accuse them of bad intentions, but it doesn't actually move us forward.
Now we're gonna move on to inappropriate jokes being used against you. I believe some of you might have experience with this. I'm not familiar, but
Why are you looking at me?
So we're living in an era of outrage culture, and people love nothing more than to look through old videos, old tweets, and try to find the juiciest thing you've ever said to use it against you. In their opinion, they're trying to hold you accountable for actions or opinions you've said and that you might still have. Some other people see it as just participating in outrage culture and trying to cancel people. How do you view that balance between accountability for past actions and just plain virtue signaling in order to get outrage points?
I stand by every outrageous thing I've ever said. I don't care. To hell with them. I don't judge myself by their standards. If they are unprepared to... I mean, for example, the interview with Ben Shapiro and Andrew Neil that was broadcast on the BBC or wherever it was, and Ben Shapiro accused Andrew Neil of being a leftist. And this is ridiculous, because he is actually a conservative. But Andrew Neil is also culpable, because he's bringing up tweets from 2012 in an interview in 2019 with Ben Shapiro. It's like, why are you doing this? How does this give you anything about, any information about Ben Shapiro's current understanding of the world? You're not actually making any kind of good faith argument, or you're trying, or even good faith line of questioning. What you're trying to do is kind of humiliate him on national TV. And this is something that journalists do a lot. And so essentially I'm just at the point where I'm like, I don't care if you found something I said in 2014 offensive. You know, I must have said something last week that you found offensive. Can we not have something a bit more relevant? But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if someone's doing that, they probably aren't going to believe you if you say, well, actually, I changed my mind, or I made a correction, or whatever, I've already apologized. They don't care, you know, so don't really engage with it. And like all things, it's just an ad hominem attack. It's not any kind of way of attempting to have any kind of dialectic to find your actual stances, your actual knowledge on a subject. So honestly, just ignore it.
There are jokes we don't tell anymore. There are performances we don't do anymore. The United States has a history of very offensive comedy that we have all culturally deemed something to be something you shouldn't do. And there's some videos of photos of politicians in like the 80s making some of these jokes. And I think it's ridiculous. If someone comes out today and is fighting for civil rights, to go back into their past and be like, but you used to be a bad person. I don't care. It's like what you said. But what's really strange to me about all of this is how does it work? I don't understand. You know, how does a sane and rational person see this story and think, wow, 30 years ago they were wearing blackface.
Oh,
Man, this person must be evil. It's like, but
what happened to the camera?
Civil rights activists now, you know what I mean? Like, people evolve, but culture evolves. And I think people often purposely are trying to misuse cultural context. But the biggest question I have, which I probably can't answer right now, maybe you guys have some thoughts, is how does this work? Like, I mean, like, the tactic seems to work. Thank God for Dave Chappelle to come out and just push that line back. It won't work on him.
Alright, I'm adding the camera, 1 second.
That special dropped, and they tried saying all the worst things in the world about Dave Chappelle, and it didn't work, so they called him boring. But good, because I don't understand why it works in the first place, because I just don't know anybody who's going to hear a joke and be like, that was literal.
It's actually a really cunning way of isolating people from their support, because if you can take something out of context from five years ago or something, the chances are that the people they're associating with now don't know anything about that event. But when they're, you know, on Twitter or wherever, it's just flashed up in front of them. Look, so-and-so did X. Here's a clip of it. You must defend your friend. I mean, everyone's going to be like, well, hang on a second. I'm not familiar with what's going on. I'm not going to just leap in the line of fire. And so it's a way of just salami slicing like another piece of your support off and to fully isolate you, so they can essentially dogpile you. It's very, very malicious, and again, it's entirely bad faith.
The big problem is that it makes it impossible to admit you're wrong. That's really what it's about. If you can't assume that someone is critiquing you in good faith, and we know now, there was a story published by the New York Times looking at, I believe it was Harvard research, that apologies always result in worse backlash. Well, then we end up in a world where it's like, I know I did wrong and I don't care. So that's what's scary to me, you know?
Well, how it happens, Tim, I think, the reason why it happens is it's kind of like a guerrilla tactic. In the sense that if you think of the anonymous people who are doing this, their record is not open to the world. Yours is. You have a history of being on Twitter. My history on Twitter is really short. and I don't have a fraction of followers of these guys, so I'm safe for now. I mean, the jokes I've made are mostly like bukkake jokes or something like that, but and that's not really. I'm sure at some point it will be offensive, but I'm just too small to really be an issue right now. But it's a guerrilla tactic because some people, like you said, they have a lot more time on their hands, and you have something to lose. You have whole careers to lose, livelihoods, eyeballs to lose. They don't. All they have to do is just anonymously in their basement search, go through this history that you have put out there, and they can take you down. It's like almost like a way of leveling this privilege that you have. It's like equalizing the thing, and like I'm just going to tear this person down.
Well, I think it's important to remember that it's a form of social attack. It's a way to try and discredit you in the eyes of your peers. And if everyone is vulnerable to this, then effectively the only thing you can do is say, well, I accept it. I accept that this person did something in their past that they're not proud of now, and they wouldn't do it in public around us now, But you've just got to be like, because it can happen to any of us. Like you say, like any kind of Twitter archaeology. If honestly, if that's going to be allowed to ruin careers, then we've got to do something about Twitter. We've got to stop using it.
Delete all of your Twitter history.
It's archived, right? It's cached. So obviously, people are very critical of cancel culture out here, and we can all praise Dave Chappelle, but if we look at the short history of celebrities just in recent memory, Kevin Hart apologized, Mario Lopez apologized. Cancel culture, at the very least, does seem to get results. Do you think that the people who have apologized to these outrage mobs, do you think that there is any retrospection on their part, an actual change in opinion, or do you think it's more of a form of societal control? Maybe you still don't agree with them, but you're now too afraid to say anything about it.
If slowly over time culture moves in a direction, everybody will move along with it. But whatever has happened because of social media has resulted in this hard left jerk that is splitting everything in half. So, I mean, that's my first observation, but whatever.
I think the most important thing about it is just think of it like there are two ways of morally holding yourself to account. There's guilt and shame, and cancel culture is part of the shame culture. And this is frankly evil. It's a horrible thing to do to someone. But in public, you get everyone to point at them and say you're a bad person. Because that person, I mean, what choice do you have when all of your peers are saying, oh God, you're a bad person, you've got to bend your knee and sort of apologize. It's not an honest apology, it's coerced. An honest apology comes from guilt, when you feel like you have done something wrong. And it doesn't require a giant audience to pressure you and harass you into serving this apology. You do it off your own merit because you feel like it's something that you have to do for your own conscience. So honestly, you've kind of got to be a bit of an asshole about it, to be honest. And when everyone's pointing at you and saying you've got to apologize, you've got to say no.
But that's what's scary to me, because I mean this panel is called "How to Admit When You're Wrong," and sometimes you are. But when we're constantly inundated with BS, eventually you just say, you know what, screw it, I'll never apologize again. And I've seen some of the most horrendous things. I want to avoid getting sued, but there was an instance where a man went on the internet and made some very horrifying admissions, which got him in serious PR trouble. And the PR company my response was, terminate this guy immediately. Like, the things he's saying and talking about doing are unacceptable in our society. But the PR company said, no, say nothing, do nothing. Just don't do anything, just shh. And it worked. And I'm like, that's terrible. Because when there's really something bad, we should change as a society. But now we can't tell what's real and what's not because it's all a political agenda.
It's entirely disingenuous, though. The only reason you do this in public is to have a political effect on that person's career. If you had a genuine problem with something, you'd come to them in person. And you'd say, look, I found this offensive. And then you'd speak to them and try and persuade them on a moral level. Maybe it would be worth you apologizing without being coerced because, that thing was a wrong thing. And if you're not already doing that, you obviously don't think it's wrong. And if it's something that's been taken out of context from 4 years ago, it's probably not wrong. And if it's something about offensive opinions, man, they can just be offended. I don't care.
I think there's a bit of a disparity in terms of who are the kinds of people who are more likely to apologize to the outreach mob and who aren't. Usually, if you are a person who wants to engage within institutions, you're working for Google or you're working in mainstream news media, you kind of have to apologize if you want to keep your job. and you want to still maintain your livelihood. So, I mean, people like Tim and Sargon who have really built their own empires, they're able to have the luxury to say, yeah, I'm not gonna apologize to the outraged mob, but everyone else who's plugged into the system kind of has to. I mean, the most recent example that I saw was Good Morning America. The host kind of sniggered a little when she was talking about a story of, I don't know the name of the son of Prince William and Kate Middleton, because I don't follow this.
I don't know the name.
Okay, the prince, whatever. The young, yeah, he's like, 4 years old, and they're just about like scheduling his life, and turns out this kid is interested in ballet. And so she kind of laughed a little, and the dance community was offended. Like, you're saying that, you're shaming all the males who have ever wanted to be a dancer and go into ballet and could never do it. And the mea culpa was ridiculous. So because it's Good Morning America, NBC, I think, or ABC. So they had to rent out like all of Times Square, and they had a public ballet lesson in Times Square. It was just one of those, like, she had to grovel and cry and then talk to members of the dance community. And then people forgave her. The dance community forgave her, and she could move on. But frankly, if she wanted to keep her job at GMA, she kind of had to do that. There was really no other option for her.
There is.
What is it?
Well, technically no, but there was an option out. What I was going to say is there's an option outside of keeping the job, and it's quitting. I'd quit. And so I wanted to push back a little bit because it's not so much that because Sargon and I have built an independent platform for ourselves. I can't speak for Sargon, but I'll say the reason I don't have to apologize is because I've never bent the knee to anybody who is trying to come after me in bad faith. I've only ever done what I felt like what was right and what I should do. And when I worked for companies that wanted to do things that I thought were wrong, I said, I won't do that. And they said, but you have to. I said, no, I don't. I'll be sitting over here. Come talk to me later. We'll figure it out. And then eventually the contract expires, and I say, I'm going to keep doing what I feel is right. So it's kind of an inversion. I think this can be solved when people finally say, if you want me to apologize for giggling, I'm not going to do that. I'll quit. And guess what? You know how ridiculous it would be if it got even bigger and the person quit from the show? I'd be willing to bet they wouldn't want to deal with that bad PR. And if they did, you know what? I don't know. I can understand why a lot of people don't want to lose their jobs, especially if it's very lucrative and you're like, my way of life is more important. I prefer principle. I'd rather live in a van down by the river than sell my soul.
So this whole conference is about trying to bring together different beliefs to have a conversation. This panel is about how to change your mind. Do you think there's anyone out there who is too far gone to actually reason with? And I'm talking about the actual extremists out there, not just Count Dankula, but the people who really are ideologues. Do you think that there's anything that can be done to bring them from the brink? Is it possible to be genuinely too far gone and unwilling to change, unwilling to admit that you were wrong?
Yeah, first off, Dank's a Scot, so there is no reasoning with him. I'm sure you're out there somewhere. But yeah, the problem with ideologues is that they misrepresent their opposition in order to justify doing something that would otherwise be unjustifiable, right? Punching a Nazi. He must be the worst person in the world. Therefore, it's not only legitimate that I punch this guy, but I can enjoy it. I can get pleasure out of something that ordinarily we'd find to be the worst thing in the world. So a sadist is the sort of person who enjoys punching someone. That's a really terrible thing. It's totally antisocial. And once you've built up this sort of series of beliefs that form like a kind of pyramid and justify doing something terrible at the end of it, if it turns out, if someone were to come along and just start unraveling these beliefs one by one, all of these would collapse in on themselves. And then you would realize, Jesus Christ, I've been awful. I have been a truly horrific person. And now I have so many apologies to give out that I don't think my ego can take this. And that's why, like, these ideologues, I don't think that many of them are actually going to be able to do it. This is why when Ian March Chung did it, I was just like, right, we accept it, because that is a really difficult thing to do. And he gave an honest apology. So we don't push him on it, we don't tease him for it, we just accept it. But then to show the others that it's actually safe to say, you know what, I might have been wrong. Maybe I don't need to be as hardline as I can. But I think that many of these people have gone so far and for so long in this sort of hardline space that they just can't do it. They can't admit they were wrong.
It can, though, and there are two people that I think are incredible. Daryl Davis, who we are expecting here, and if you're not familiar, he befriended He's a blues musician. He happens to be black, and he befriended Klan members, and they changed their mind when they realized he's a good guy. But there's also Majid Nawaz, and I could be wrong, correct me, but Majid was a terrorist, or I should say extremist. And he now is a mainstream presenter on the radio in the UK. That's right, yeah.
No, that's correct. I probably should have qualified what I'm saying with in the space that created them. I think that you have to draw them out of this space, and this is why I'm so against deplatforming and ostracism, because I think that's what creates extremists. When you're in a particular bubble, you're only hearing the same responses, and you don't get any kind of charity from the other side, any kind of a charitable interpretation of anything that you've said or done. And so you just can't leave this space, and you can't be deprogrammed in a situation like that.
The internet scares me, because in the past, when somebody joined a cult, you could physically remove them from the cult. And there are tactics they use, love bombing and lying to you and surrounding you and then coercing you. But now people are in a cult and they're surrounded 24/7 by social media. And they might encounter someone in the physical world saying, that's actually not true, and they'll immediately retreat to their phones, to their safe space with their other cult members. So it's getting scary. I would, that's at least what I'm seeing.
And you notice how upset they get as soon as you start presenting information that's counter to the narrative. This is why I'm hoping that I get to speak to some protesters. I want to know who the Nazi is. I want to know what they've said. And the thing is, as soon as you start asking, you realize these people are incredibly low information. You say, okay, when did this happen? Where did it happen? What did they say? Who did they say it to? And as soon as you ask just questions like that, the whole, like Andrew Breitbart showed this, they just get really upset, they get really angry, and they have to walk away from you. And so you end up with no protesters at all. It's really great.
So I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time in my day job interviewing former extremists, partly because we're trying to figure out, if we have enough data points and ask enough people who were extremists at some point, in my case, Islamist extremists, what was it that changed their minds? What planted that first seed of doubt that the world that they were indoctrinated to is not the case? If we have enough data points of what was the trigger, could we reverse engineer that? And what content do we need to put out to achieve that effect? And what strikes me about this is that Majid is somebody who's really close to my organization as well. It's so different why and how somebody de-radicalizes. Like in Majid's case, he was sitting in jail in Egypt. He was jailed for terrorist activity, recruiting for Hizb ut-Tahrir, which was a terrorist group. And it was sitting in jail, interacting with other people who were also in jail at the time. And when Amnesty International came to bail him out, he had this epiphany, just like, well, here I am incarcerated in Egypt for these actions, and this organization is coming in, and they still believe in me, and whoa, like this was kind of like his mindfuck moment, and that's kind of the moment that we're always trying to find, but it's so different what pushes that button for everybody, and the day we act like there's just no hope for the other side, that's kind of dangerous. We always have to keep that hope, even if there isn't in some cases, and I know there isn't. I'm realistic enough to say that we all even have family members who just won't even change their minds when you present them with new evidence. But there has to be. We have to believe that there is.
The door always has to be open. Exactly. Our door has to be open because their door isn't.
Exactly.
Just delete Twitter.
All right, so now we're going to bring media back into the conversation. I think right now the idea or facade of the impartial mainstream media is pretty much dead, right? It's widely recognized that for most sources, you either have left-wing publications, right-wing publications, and independent commentary and media has largely followed in the same veins, right? I mean, you have Rebel versus Vice and heck, even Blaze TV. Do you think that the way our media has kind of formed around ideologies is
Just 1 second.
good
I'm gonna
for
reload it
giving
again
people a
for whatever
different point of
reason.
view? Or has it just reinforced echo chambers,
Sorry
therefore
about that. I
making
don't know
it
what's going
harder
on
for
here.
people to change their minds if they have confirmation bias anytime they open up their timeline?
Everyone in the room knows the answer to that question. It's been really bad. This is why I'm constantly saying you have to choose a series of content creators and media outlets from any point of the political spectrum, even ones you find really maybe even people like David Pakman. And and you have to sit there through their content. I mean, I still have to watch the Young Turks, and it's insufferable. It's like a broadcast from another planet. Like, what the hell are they talking about? But they're so convinced of the rightness of their arguments because there is never a dissenting voice on their show, and they don't talk to any of the opposition. They don't obviously watch any opposition.
Okay, this is really like.
And so it's just
pissing me off.
nonsense.
Yo,
And the
Ace
thing is, what I find
One, man.
interesting
What's
is
up,
that
man?
I
Trying to
mean,
get this
I
USB
used to
camera to
criticize
work.
Fox
I might have
News,
to
like,
exit
back in, like,
stream for it to
2008, I
work.
was a huge Jon Stewart fan.
It's
I
really
used to criticize
annoying
Fox
me,
News
man.
with, oh, they're right-wing partisans, blah, blah, the left isn't like this. And now
What's up,
Fox
buddy?
News
How
are
you
the
doing?
ones who actually have the opposition on. Now, it's always low-hanging fruit. It's never as well represented as it could be, or should be, but at least they have that, you know? At least you get someone like Tucker Carlson who does talk to crazy
Yeah, I
people
gotta
or
finish
whatever, you
this
know? But the left just don't do that.
stream with my
And,
back
like,
camera.
I used to really like
Oh my
podcasts.
gosh, this is
Like,
such
as a
a
person,
nightmare.
and
What
we
is
do
going
like
on here?
podcasts and we'd have really
Why would
good
it do
conversations.
this?
And then after the election of Trump, I was like, he
Oh,
wouldn't talk to
whatever.
me anymore. It was like, you know,
Alright.
no, he's gone right wing, and I'm like, have I? Oh Jesus, you know.
How you doing, buddy?
And I don't think it was actually that. I think that he just went further left wing. I think they retreated into the.
Welcome,
into the
welcome. I'm
tribalistic
almost near the end of my
nature everything.
workout, but doing okay.
It's
How are
really
you? I'm
sad.
doing well, thank you.
It's
I'm
really
doing
sad, But I
well.
think that that's not helping them, and it certainly won't help you to only imbibe the media from one side. It'll turn you into a resentful, ill-informed person who just hates the other side, and that is surely what we're all trying to avoid.
How many coincidences until you've won the lottery, right? I think, was it 5 or 6? You're going for Mega Millions. Over the past couple of years, various news outlets have done the exact same thing, and I have to wonder why. They'll publish a bombshell report about Donald Trump and Russia, and then a day later retract it. And it keeps happening. In fact, The Intercept has compiled the top 10 biggest stories that were published and then retracted. And so when it comes to the media, there's a few really dangerous things. If you watch my content, you're trusting that I'm right, but I'm trusting that NBC is right. And so it's just, you
There
know,
we
so
go.
I definitely do research. I'll
That's
dig,
not
I
bad.
look for
That's a
various
little bit
sources to try and figure out if this matches up. But one of the safest things I think we can do in this, you know, line of thinking is wait. The other day, Lawrence O'Donnell reported that Trump had some, you know, on his tax forms, loans co-signed by Russia, and I saw that story and said, wow, that's huge. I'm not going to talk about it. You know why? Because a day later, it was retracted. And that keeps happening. And so the reason I asked about the coincidences, do I believe there's this grand
What is up,
conspiracy
Ace
among these
One?
companies where I
Friday,
would
man.
the evil guy with the top hat twirling his mustache laughing about how he's manipulating the people? No. But I think at a certain level, some people think to themselves, if the story is sensational, we're going to make $1 million.
Yo, thanks,
And
Ace One. I
if
appreciate
it's
that, man.
sensational is wrong, we're going to make $1 million, and then we're going to make a little extra money when we retract it the next day.
Thanks,
So
buddy.
that's what's really dangerous to me is right now the desperation in these media companies means you'll get Lawrence O'Donnell with one source who didn't review any documents, and that's good enough for him to claim that Trump got loans signed by Russia because the news goes crazy. Everybody clicks it, everybody sees the ads. Hey, we sold our inventory already. We can retract tomorrow, no big deal. I think money is playing a huge role in how the media is becoming overly partisan because they know if they can rile you up and get you angry, outrage sells the best.
This is
And I will
bench
always
press.
say
We
this
did
when I bring this up.
60 so far.
I
No,
think I'm
we
playing a
did
similar game.
48.
I think I put out content where I'm like, oh, you know, this
50
is shocking
charm,
and upsetting to me. So I don't really know how you break out
32,
of this cycle, especially if I think
60
I'm
leg
doing the right
raises,
thing by
2
calling it
nunchucks,
out,
and
but
2
it's still
exercise
a
legs.
part of this, you know, political
Whew.
whirlpool we're stuck in.
And sorry, if I can just add to that.
Ooh-wee, man,
because
this is
there's a part of
intense.
that the ads, the social media contributes to this.
Oh,
The viral tweets of the initial fake news that creates outrage, that gets the clicks, millions of people will see that, hundreds of people will see the retraction. And so that adds to the narrative of the partisan side, whichever side it is. And you can see, like, the tweets, that the narrative gets longer by each chain of event that turns out to be false. And then this is why people like the Young Turks feel like they're broadcasting from an alternate dimension, because they've got a narrative that has been debunked, but they haven't seen the debunks. They've just seen the viral tweets, and they didn't bother to look into it any further.
I actually would push back on. I actually disagree that this is a bad thing. And talking about changing minds, I used to exactly think how you to think about this media ecosystem, but I went on Michael Malice's show, and
He's
he's an
great.
anarchist. Okay, and I'm like far from an anarchist.
Yo, thanks, Ace One. I
But
appreciate
he
that,
actually
dude.
convinced me about
How
something.
you doing, my man?
That
Otherwise-
actually the fragmentation of media was
I know I
actually a
asked that
good
already.
thing. And here's the perspective.
Well, it's
It's
hard to
that if you think about what media was like in, I don't know, the 70s or the 60s, you had like 3 or 4 channels, and these were what Eric Weinstein would call gated institutional narratives. They were controlling, there was large consensus among the only like 3 or 4 channels that existed. Everyone was watching one of these 4 channels. There was really nothing else. The fragmentation allowed for alternative viewpoints to actually be broadcast. And if you think about, say, a story like what happened with Brett Weinstein and Evergreen College, that would never have gotten, it took maybe like 3 weeks for the New York Times to cover that story. But in a world where there was only these gated institutional narratives, that story would never have come to light. And the reason that it did was because we do have a fragmented ecosystem, and it was kind of upregulated. The signal was upregulated by FINE, the far fringe or whatever of media. But eventually, mainstream media cannot ignore it. And so there is a reason, there is a case to be made that this actually wasn't a bad thing.
See, that's a very good point. But this is also this fragmented media is also contributing to the fragmented culture, because when you have 2 or 3 gated institutions, you're right. The flow of information is very reliable and very easy to control at a very narrow point. So it could be that important information from governmental sources or wherever is not being fed to the public where it should be. But it also creates a shared understanding of the world, and this is what the benefit of having a sort of gated mainstream media was. We were all at least on the same page because we all had access to the same information. Now with this fragmentation, and because it's very poor checking, bad checking on the factual nature of the information, now we've got fragments of very partisan areas of society that legitimately loathe other areas of
so
society
hard.
to the point where
I climb bench press is so hard. Just finished doing some gym running. Nice, man.
Oh, the straight
Heck,
pride
dude.
parade guys. It's like,
Yeah.
really? Really, they're fascists. Fascists go around saying straight pride now, do they? No, this is a troll, but you're saying, oh, we can kill this, we can do that. And this is why there's so much violence now. Because people legitimately hate each other for bad reasons, and there's no way of bringing that back. So I agree that there is definitely the advantage of having a dispersed media landscape. So decentralized, sorry, yes. Media landscape where everyone gets to speak and becomes a media outlet. It's very useful, but the nature of social media is funneling us into channels, and it's doing social damage. So it swings and roundabouts.
And we are on time, which is phenomenal. First time today. Thank you, panel. Just real quick from Minds.com, it's a very, very important question, so let me please ask it. Will Tim take off his hat and prove he has hair?
I don't have hair. I don't have
A
any
very,
hair.
very personal question. The answer is no.
Thank you for being here. I apologize for the stutter. This event was threatened today, in the past weeks. We have all today participated in what I understand to be operational security, aka OPSEC, as well as communication security, aka CONSEC. The location was disclosed 2 hours before, and what can we here do today and in the days to come to alleviate and turn this ship and this tide around, or in a better direction?
I can, well, the simple words are fight back, but I guess in what capacity?
I like the keeping
So I
tabs
can't
of the reps
speak
and sets
too
to get
much
to
about
track
what our
improvement.
plans are.
Yeah,
I will
man, thanks,
stress
buddy.
One of the biggest
Also,
problems we're facing
I
right
lose
now
track, you know what
is
I
that
mean?
there
I like to
are
mindlessly
people
work out.
who are terrified of
It's
2
an
or 3
account,
random
you know what I
phone
mean?
calls from random people who lie. And I have no idea why that works. It makes no sense. But people are so terrified to stand up for what they believe in. You have to. If you have a business and you book some seemingly nice gentleman who happens to be, I don't know, a Jewish man, for instance, and he says he wants to have an event called Ending Racism, and then some crazy guy from Seattle calls you and says he's actually a Nazi, you should probably say, I'm gonna Google that.
Yeah,
real
man,
quick
like I
instead
have
of just,
all
"You
my
got it."
previous workouts here
So-
too,
But this is so
like all
so look,
previous
But
whatever.
There's a downside to that, because if you get
All
good
12 are
results,
here.
you'll find oh, Melissa Chen said this 3 years ago,
That
this
I've
makes her a
streamed,
Nazi. And there'll be 500
buddy.
different outlets, all of the same political persuasion.
Ooh, I might do one more bench press and every workout
Our
matters.
society
Yeah.
needs to become resilient to lies and smears that come from random people.
Thanks, man. I'm probably going to just do one more round of bench press, and I'm going to probably call it a
I believe
stream.
a lot of this nastiness that
I
we're
gotta
seeing
get back to
is
work. This is
derived
just a
from people
lunchtime,
sensing that they're unifying
stream. Usually I have a
narratives
USB
are
camera, but for some
collapsing,
reason it
and, there's nothing
stopped
left
working
for them
midstream.
to
That's why I have
jump
this
to.
weird camera like this.
And so,
Alright, I'll do
I'm not
one
sure
more
if you're familiar with
set
the
of the
author
bench.
Noah Yuval Harari, who wrote
I've already did
*Sapiens* and *Homo Deus* and 21
7
Lessons
sets
for
of
the
8
21st Century.
reps
But
for
in
bench
those books, he
of
talks about
115
how
pounds.
historically we lived with monotheisms to really explain our lives, and then once Nietzsche said God is dead,
Yo, thanks
we
for being
moved
here,
into the
Ace.
age of ideological religions, and there were 3 ideological religions, the humanisms. There was evolutionary humanism, which was kind of like Nazism. There was socialist humanism, and there was liberal humanism. Okay, I'll get my question out. So, World War II, the first one collapsed, evolutionary humanism, end of the Soviet Union, socialist humanism collapsed, and now liberal humanism is flickering. What's next? What story is next to unite people? Does anybody have a guess at what that might be?
Ooh, I'm
I
sweating.
think maybe the Cold War against China
Good work, I
might
said
be
it.
the
Good work,
next
I said
one that we could all rally around. I think it's pretty apparent that there's a new world order that's kind of like shuffling into existence, and
Yo, you're
and
welcome. It's
pretty
great to be
scary
here. Yo,
that
thanks,
how much
Ace. It's
power
great that you're here,
economic and
dude.
political that China's
So I
gaining.
did. I gotta
and,
sign off
and
now. But
all the other
I'll
countries that are
recap.
developing around the world are looking.
I did 8
Do we want to follow the Western model?
sets
of
of 8
democracy
reps
and
of bench
human
press.
rights, look
Holy
at how
jeez, I
they're
did
feeling, they're
64
Trump,
bench
that's kind of their
reps.
narrative.
That's crazy.
Or do we want to follow what China's
I
doing?
did,
State-directed capitalism, techno-surveillance.
I did 60
it seems to be
bicep
working,
curls per
and
arm.
obviously in that country there is
I
only
did
one way, right? Because
40
Twitter,
fly
everything that
movements.
we love about the free world is banned there.
I did
Social
one
media,
set of
free
8
speech,
reps of
everything.
incline bench press.
So,
Oh my god, that
to me, that fight seems to be.
I still have some
or at least
micro muscles in me that
trying
aren't
to,
developed
like,
for the incline bench press still,
mold
honestly.
people into like recognizing
Yo,
that
we got
if we
off
don't
the
defend
turf.
this,
We could use
that is our alternative
00919.
and that is our future. That might be our next.
Thank you
hope,
so
but
much,
that's
off
my
the
guess.
turf, for increasing my viewership count. I appreciate it, off the
Question
turf.
from Minds.com.
Nobody clicked that link, but thank you, off the turf.
Tim, I worked in the internet
You're the
display
best.
ad industry. How do we solve the
Actually,
problem
you're not,
of
'cause
fake
it's
news,
probably
like Occupy Democrats
stealing
or the
stuff,
daily
you're not
news,
the best.
while
Don't steal
allowing
anything
the
off the
internet
turf.
to work in its current
I
model?
believe in you, don't steal.
That's a tough question because it centers on free speech, the right of an organization to lie. So
70
I will
leg
clarify
raises.
with Occupy Democrats, not giving you my opinion, giving
2
you the opinion
nunchuck
of
rounds
Newsguard,
just for
a
fun.
third-party
And 2
media
exercise
rating agency
bikes.
that says Occupy Democrats is not trustworthy.
That was like 5-6
And
minutes.
according
That's
to
pretty fun.
Newswhip,
But I'm out
which
of here,
did
dude.
an analysis on media, the biggest
I'm out of
sources
here, my
of
man. I
news
gotta
for
go.
the left
Thank you so
is
much.
Occupy Democrats,
Ace,
and the
one,
biggest
you're the
source
man,
for the right
dude.
is Fox News. So
How's it going?
the
My
challenge
goal
is we
man.
have these two
I guess I was
partisan
late,
outlets.
like
One is deemed not credible,
12 hours.
but they have a right to say
But
what they say.
yo, thanks for being here,
So
man.
I don't, I think this may be the biggest
Running, that's
problem
good, man.
liberal
I want to,
ideals face in that if
I
I,
want to,
respect the right of everyone to have free
maybe
speech,
go
that means
outside and
people are
enjoy
going
the
to lie
sun.
and they're going to lie to gain power.
Should we end
and
the
as
stream
long as we're not
showing
willing
outside
to
one?
cheat
Stream
the
showing
same
what
way
it's
they
like
will,
outside. It's so beautiful.
I fear we'll lose.
I'm gonna lose the mic though.
2 things. One, I'd like to point out that in the program you used the wrong "your" in the title of this panel.
Who did that?
Tim,
That wasn't me.
point of order. I did not write the programs. Tim,
Looking at
Tim.
you, Sean.
Get a copy.
that guy right there. Right there. Get him.
But my
He doesn't get to ask a question now, so.
my question would be, I noticed that, like, as far as getting back to the topic of how to admit when you're wrong and cancel culture apologies not working, I've noticed that a lot of the right has been reactive to the cancel culture of the left by creating their own. And the right has stated, like Michael Knowles explicitly has said, that he wants a society based on grace where we can figure out like how to forgive each other for past transgressions, but to do that tomorrow, but today hold them to their own standards. And I want to know, can we extend grace to them directly, or do we have to have grace based on mutually assured destruction?
We've got to do it. We've got to be the ones who do it because they're not going to be the ones who do it. And if we just do what they do, how are we any better than them? So why would we? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, their behavior is just the worst. This is not a behavior model to emulate at all. And you're right, the right does do this. I mean, one of the things like with Milo Yiannopoulos, the way he got destroyed.
Yo, Ace One, thank you, man. I appreciate that, homie.
Throwaway comments on Joe Rogan.
I really appreciate that, dude.
Stuff like this. It was absolute nonsense.
That's where I grew up, man. That's where my dad, my mom raised me in Ottawa.
Really
Ottawa, Canada. Okay, man. Okay, you have to sign off, though. I'll show the neighborhood one last time. But I'm losing my mic again. Peace out, Ace One. You're the one, man. You're the one. You're the man, dude.
For anti-extremism and authoritarian, I have on-the-ground experience with extremist groups such as Antifa and neo-Nazis. I have coffee.
Me too, man.
I had coffee thrown on me by anti-fascists. I have been spit on by neo-Nazis. My question is, in what way can we do to get the extremists of the extreme on both sides of the political spectrum out of here? Right? Because I do believe in the idea of redemption. Right? I don't believe one person's set forever in their ways. I'm a key example of that. I used to be very far right. I walked away from that because I discovered I was no better than the very thing that I was attacking.
Okay, since no one else is going to say it, can I suggest gladiatorial combat? Pay-per-view, the moderates make the extremists fight to the death, you know?
Well, I think one of the goals of a conference like this and you know the last panel we have is specifically to figure out how to bring people back from the edge. So I can't necessarily speak to, you know, how we do it other than hold events, invite people in, give them a chance to speak, give them respect to hear their ideas, challenge their ideas. But I do want to make sure I stress.
Yo, thank you so much.
Media
you're the man, Ace One. Peace out. Thanks, buddy.
The significance
it's like holding myself accountable, man.
And I will stress.
You know what I mean? That's why I stream it, because it makes me
more lethal,
like
more alarming.
Put it all in. Otherwise, I would do probably half the reps. You know what I mean?
It doesn't mean
thanks,
the far
buddy.
left
Appreciate
is
it,
good.
man.
It means
all
they're
right.
both
Catch you later.
extremists.
Have a good day.
So
have a weekend. It's a Friday.
What worries me is that when you have a media that says it's not sensational enough. You know, did you know a woman just threw a Molotov cocktail